And this is where the world's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Jacinda Ardern's New Zealand is a country spiraling out of control after coming down with a serious case of COVID madness. In the past few days, the totalitarian and lefty clothing has cancelled her wedding due to Omicron, a tiny sacrifice compared to that of anyone unlucky enough to come into contact with a positive case, who faced being locked up in isolation for 24 days.
That means Omicron is now circulating in Auckland and possibly the Nelson Marlborough region, if not elsewhere. On that basis, as we have previously signalled, the whole of New Zealand will move into the red setting of the traffic light system at 11:59 p.m. tonight, Sunday, 23 January.
This whole situation upsets me greatly. As you might know, I am a dual citizen of the UK and New Zealand. My parents born here in the UK, or my dad on a British Army base in Malta. I was born in New Zealand, moved here when I was 21. But as I point out in my new Mail Online column, as it stands for me right now, there is literally no way to return to New Zealand, no matter what happens to my family or friends. These policies have been nothing short of wicked for Kiwis trapped overseas, and Ardern's country now provides the proof that the isolationism of zero COVID is downright dangerous. Well, I'm delighted to get the perspective of one of the few folks down under who have been brave enough to speak out on the troubling developments there throughout this entire pandemic. Star Sky News Australia host Rita Panahi, who launched her brand new show this week. Rita, it's great to have you here. And look, I know things have been crazy in Australia, and we've spoken about that so much on the show. But at least your Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, seems to have a desire to return to normal at some point, whereas Ardern is just getting madder and madder by the day.
It's the only thing that gives us some comfort here in Australia, those of us who have called out some of the crazy overreach over the last couple of years, is that at least we're not New Zealand. That is the only thing that gives us comfort. I mean, they are mad. They are still effectively pursuing an elimination model when we know, and we have known for about 18 months now, that this thing's going to be endemic. There's no way to eliminate it. And at some point, they're going to have the virus circulate just like Australia is. And I think Australia is the perfect example to them, because we were almost having a quasi-elimination strategy ourselves here, in some states anyway. And yet, right now, we've got some of the highest per capita COVID rates in the world, higher than the UK, higher than the US, because we had hardly any infection over the past 18 months. Of course,
and this is what's so frustrating.
Everyone's got it.
Yeah, because Rita, we were saying throughout 2020, throughout 2021, if you keep this virus out, at some point when you open up, it is going to ravage the country, and that's exactly what's happening.
Well, yeah, and like you, I speak to infectious disease experts on a regular basis, and they have been saying everyone is going to be exposed to this virus. Now they're saying everyone's going to be probably exposed multiple times, just like influenza. Just because you've had it once doesn't mean you won't get it again. So we know all this, and yet in New Zealand, they think they can just lock their borders, become some bizarro hermit nation forever. I mean, at some point they're going to run out of resources, because I would hate to see what their national debt's doing. And you know what? They will say, well, look at our death rate. Our COVID death rate is lower than just about anywhere in the world. It's lower than the UK, certainly. But you look at the overall death rate, and it actually hasn't changed. You look at deaths up to 12 months up to September 2021. Same as up to 12 months up to September 2019. So people are still dying. They might not be having the COVID tick next to their name when they die, but as we know, many COVID deaths, the majority have a number of comorbidities. So it's often people dying with COVID, not just from COVID. And they don't seem to still understand that in New Zealand. They think they're becoming immortal. No one's ever going to die again.
I know, and actually, I've been talking a lot about those stats on my show over the past week, Rita, because a Freedom of Information request was done here, and it actually revealed that less than 18,000 folk have died solely from COVID with no other underlying conditions over the course of the pandemic. So really, what in New Zealand they love to talk about, what in Australia they love to talk about is this 150,000 death toll in the UK, but it's actually incredibly misleading.
It is, and you also have to look at the average or the median age of death. People, again, like they get upset if you mention that, but again, we are not immortal. Everybody dies, and certainly in Australia, the median age of death has been at life expectancy or higher than life expectancy throughout the pandemic. So that in itself is, I think, is fairly crucial information that should be talked about. And one of the most absurd things throughout this pandemic, whether we're talking UK, US, or here in Australia, is just the lack of knowledge about not just the risk factors, but the death rate and the hospitalisation rate for different age groups. And the fact that things like morbid obesity are a huge issue. And yet, I don't know, because it's not PC or we don't want to body shame anybody, we haven't talked about that. We've locked people up, we've closed gyms, everyone's got fatter, and yet we know with this virus, obesity is an enormous risk factor for having a really bad reaction. But New Zealand, really, they are mad. Can you imagine being locked up for 24 days just because you're a contact?
When you may not have even had COVID. It's madness. And look, the reason I wrote this column today, Rita, and it's deeply personal for me because I will get a lot of pushback on it. And obviously, I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a dual citizen and I'm very proud of my New Zealand roots. But the reality is I haven't been able to see my mum, dad and my sister for 2 years now. I've had friends, Rita, who have been locked up in a government-run hotel with members of the army outside while their mother has died in a hospital down the road. So anyone who talks about Jacinda Ardern as if she's some sort of be kind human being, it's like she's not. She's the opposite. And you know, Rita, they were doing this Squid Game style lottery. That's the only way I can describe it, where we have to enter to try and buy a ticket back to New Zealand. 45,000 people try each month. There's only something like 1,000 winners. Once you win, you then have to spend about £2,000 on a flight, then another £2,000 to spend 14 days locked up with these members of the army outside. And because of Omicron, Rita, they have even axed the lottery. So for me, it is about time we start exposing Jacinda Ardern for what she really is. She's a nasty human being, and if she didn't have that sort of soft voice and that smirk, we'd be talking about her in an incredibly different manner.
Well, I don't think it's just the soft voice or the smirk. I think it is the absolutely pathetic, gutless New Zealand media. I've travelled to New Zealand fairly extensively as well, and every time I'm there, I am shocked by just how pitiful and weak their media is. Everything she says is uncritically accepted. There's no scrutiny. And you know what? There should be, because she has absolutely failed to fulfill her promises, whether it was building projects, whether it was about immigration.
And she's breaking international law too on this, Rita. But look, we will continue this discussion. Congratulations on your new show, Rita, too. I'm really looking forward to watching it. That was Sky News Australia presenter Rita Panahi.